Hey, good morning everyone, TractorMan44 here. I've got a little bit of a problem. This is probably a silly video to make, but if I've got the problem, other people have the problem too. Now first and foremost, let me tell you, I'm a retired HVAC commercial service tech, and I'm LP certified. I've had my license for many, many years. Actually, I got to check, it's probably expired by now. But at any rate, I've worked on LP and natural gas, fuel oil, and electric heating and appliances of virtually every size and capacity you can imagine. From the smallest residential system to some of the largest that you can imagine. This is an issue that I've got with my own personal setup. This is 2 LP tanks going into a manifold right here. It's an automatic changeover manifold. The missus has been telling me for a year that she smells gas. I come out and I check all the connections. I don't see anything. There's no gas leaks. And I've actually disconnected tanks, laid them down, and searched the bottom of the tank for leaks. No cracks, nothing, no seepage whatsoever. I finally found my leak. And it's something I've never seen before. Right here, around this gauge, if you take a look, it's got a little red indicator. That's because I have both tanks shut off right now. But if I've got the lever pointing this direction, meaning that if I open this valve, that tank is going to supply pressure to the system. This will pop to the green position. You see it pop to the green position, that means we've got pressure. And then what will happen, this thing will automatically flip when the pressure gets so low in the tank. If you leave both tanks on, this will automatically flip to start taking fuel out of the second tank until that tank goes down to nothing, and then it'll pop to red because there's not enough there to sustain the regulator. This thing has developed a leak right around this sight glass right here. That's non-repairable. There's nothing you can do to it. So what I've done, I went ahead and ordered a replacement, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to first disconnect the tank, roll the tanks out of the way, and then we have to disconnect the pipes, and we'll go ahead and use the same configuration in the replacement identical regulator. This regulator is a pounds to inches regulator, meaning it takes pressure, high pressure out of the tank at whatever pressure it is, up to a maximum, and I can't remember what the maximum inlet pressure is on this, but these tanks will not exceed them even in the sunlight. But then it'll reduce it to the 11.5 inches or so that your appliance needs to operate, perfectly inside your house. I've only got a kitchen range on LP gas. We don't have a furnace or anything on LP gas. If we had a furnace, we would be using a 500 or 1,000 gallon tank, but that's not the case. Only the range, which is why I just have these little bitty tanks. Now, these are 100-pound tanks, but these 100-pound tanks, you got to stop and think, how many gallons is that? At roughly 4 or 4.5 pounds per gallon of LP gas on a 100-pound tank, you're only getting about 21, 22 gallons of liquid LP in there. The liquid remains at the bottom, so the top portion of the tank above the liquid level is the vapor. So the vapor pressure will come out and go through the regulator, and the regulator will then supply it down to your circuit into your house in the required 11 inches of water column. That's a whole nother story. Now what I do, because one of these tanks lasts me about 6 months, so I'm out here flipping around and changing, not too often, but it's always going to be in the snow or rain or whatever, so I keep me a Chinesium 1/8 wrench right here, just underneath the protective cover right here. It's a Chinese wrench. It's not a real high quality wrench, but it works. It does what I need to do, and it's always here when I need it. And you got to remember too, whenever you see a little crack on the outsides of the nuts, that's going to mean that fitting is going to be a left-handed thread, not a right-handed thread. So that means it's got to loosen the direction you would normally tighten. Yeah, they're about 130 pounds full. That one there's about 3/4 full. So now we'll spin these guys off of here because I have to install those on the new one. Take this off here. That fitting's got to come out, and then we'll unbolt it from the back. We got to disconnect the flare off the discharge side of this guy here. Now I got to take the whole regulator assembly off of that stand. It was a fight, but it gave it up. We have to have this fitting for the outlet of the regulator. This is the actual regulator right here, of course. There's an actual vent right there. Sometimes in the wintertime, if you have excessive snow or whatever blowing up underneath your hood, you can actually plug that vent up, and there has to be a release of pressure on the downstream of the regulator diaphragm, or it will not open, will not pass gas. Everything should be identical. It's the exact same brand, exact same model number, and everything. We should be able to put our fitting, put a little dope on this fitting right here, and thread it right into this guy right here, and we're about ready to go. Pipe dope is nothing more than a thread lubricant. The threads, the angle of the threads or the thread pitch themselves is what actually seals the vapor inside the line. And you put your dope on, make sure you don't get any over the inside, because any of it on the inside could flake off as it dries out, and it could blow through and then plug up an orifice or a regulator or something of that nature. So make sure that you get no pipe dope on the inside of the fitting. I'll go ahead and snug this down just a little bit, and we'll go ahead and mount that right back up into here in the exact same position it was. Now with that fully installed, it's time to give attention to your flare. Now a flare, I've had every argument you can imagine concerning putting dope on a flare fitting or not. The flare fitting does not require any dope. The crispness of the 45-degree angle on a standard LP gas or standard flare nut, and also the factory brass fitting, or the 45-degree angle on the brass fitting, mates itself. If you have a perfectly formed flare, you're not going to have any issue at all, and it requires absolutely no pipe dope at all. Good snug twist is all you need to put onto those guys right there. Once you get the pressure on, you have to leak test every bit of it. And if it's leaking, it's going to show you right there. This fitting here, once you break it loose, this is actually a double flare fitting, very similar to what you have on a brake line. So that takes a flaring adapter for an actual flaring tool in order to make up that fitting right there. We'll just snug it, and then we'll leak test. We're going to go ahead and do the other one. Then we're going to set a tank back on. It's got pressure in it. We're going to go ahead and pressure test everything. Clean all that debris off of this thing. Now that flare, I took it back over to bench grinder, and I hit it with the buffing wheel, the wire wheel, and cleaned all that big fitting up. These are both right-handed threads on these guys, this one and this one. Okay, we're going to set one tank back in place. Now with an indicator pointing this direction over here, we're going to be using this tank, of course. You see the red indicator under here, and you see the disconnected line over here. Nothing's going to come out of this line. So all I do is open the tank, watch the red disappear, it'll flip to green. See, it's green, so that indicates we're now supplying the house with fuel. And there's nothing coming out over here. Now it's time to do a little bit of a leak test. This is a bird dog. It's a leak detector. It's for all kinds of gases. I actually continue buying this for repairing flat tires. Okay, I see a little bit of a leak right here yet, so I got to tighten this guy up a little more. Remember, this is left-handed thread. When you're leak checking, it's good to even check the stems on your tanks too. The stems on your tank can become worn, and they'll actually start leaking right there, and you'll leak half a tank of fuel before you even know it. Okay, I think we're good to go. I'm going to set the other tank over on this side to connect this up, and then this, if you leave both tanks opened up, whenever the one tank gets really, really low to where it's nothing but just low vapor pressure, this will flip automatically and start taking gas out of this tank here. Now, it won't bleed from one tank to the other, like I'm showing you right here. The empty tank will not purge or bleed any air off of the full tank, because if that would be the case, the guys would come out and change your tanks, and they'd be taking a third of your tank back because it would have pumped from one tank to the other. Well, that's not the case. Okay, the whole point, I think, of the video was just to let you know that, there's things like this. There's basic maintenance things that you got to go through when you live out in the country or when you just live by yourself. Depending on what your qualifications are, what your abilities are, you can do many of these things yourself. And like this right here, you really should be have at least a basic understanding of LP gases, the pressure they operate at, the dangers, and and what you can get away with. And LP gas is heavier. If you have an actual leak and you actually have a low spot, right there on your property, like down off to a lake or whatever, this heavier LP gas, if there's no heavy wind, it'll just kind of float down on the ground, and it'll go and it'll collect in that low-lying area, and you have a potential for a bit of a hazard in that situation. So you have to know kind of what you're doing, and it is best if you don't, just to get somebody that you can trust to do it, you know, or a certified LP service tech, you know, that works for an LP gas company. But at any rate, I'm going to go ahead and put this on here. I'll go ahead and leak check this one last time, put the cover down on this thing, and we'll call this one done. And you know what? This Tractor Man 44, and we're out of here, guys.